This is a show about facing fear, unlocking courage, and taking action.
Courage isn't necessarily a daunting thing.
It's going to give you more purpose. It's going to give you more drive.
It feels like making a courageous decision is going to get you closer to who you aspire to be.
It's knowledge plus faith plus action equals courage.
It starts with the human, like the person. How are we relating to and connecting with and getting past the formality of being agency and client and getting to a place of real friendship and trust? I think trust is the underpinning of everything you do.
If you look up the word kin in the dictionary, and I know you guys have, and I can only imagine how many other words you scraped in the dictionary. But if you look at kin, the noun version of it is one's family and relations. And then if you go to the adjective, it's related. You guys, what are you building over there at kin? And we'll even back up and say I'm joined today by the founders of kin, Sophie Ozoux, who's out here with me on the west, my neighbor-ish. And then we got Kwame Taylor-Hayford, who's joining us. I guess you're taking care of the other coast, right?
That's right. Here from Brooklyn, New York.
So that's not bad. We got Brooklyn. Are you in Venice, Sophie?
LA, yeah, Venice.
Oh, you guys are winning. You guys are clearly winning. So let's talk about the name kin, shall we? Like, how many names did you scrape? How many did you get through? How hard was it to get down to kin? And then I'm curious in your process, how important is the URL as you're searching for a name?
Well, I'll start by saying, for those who don't know us, we look nothing alike, but we do share a very deep kinship. And, when we started the company, we wanted to find a name that reflected our values. And both Kwame and I grew up in Africa, traveled and lived in Europe, found ourselves in the US. And I think that background, that kind of third world culture has really infused and imbued all of our way of thinking and the way we wanted to think about business as well. And we often think that when we try to be courageous and take on big challenges, this sense of kinship is really important. That trust, that friendship, that partnership, that's how you move barriers. That's how you challenge the status quo and lead to progress. So yeah, there's many names, some that we won't mention on this podcast, but I think at the end of the day, kin kind of very simply summed up, who we were, what we wanted to do, and the type of culture we wanted to foster.
There's this really great quote that Sophie found. I think it was a Mother Teresa quote maybe. And it's this idea that, we all belong to each other. And for us, it just rang so true. I think we get into trouble when we feel we are so separate and everyone is motivated by something completely different. And we're never more apart than in that frame of mind. So what if we accepted that, hey, we have a lot more in common, and we saw this growing up, and in so many disparate situations. People care about their family. They care about their work. They care about, connecting with other human beings. They care about the wellness of their community and of society at large. And these are all things that they're so much bigger than one location or one context, and so for us, it felt like, let's draw on the things that are close to us and the things that bring us together.
Okay, but you got to give me at least one other name that was in the running, that was close. Give me one other name that was like, we kind of looked at this and we couldn't get the URL, or we kind of looked like this and it just fell short. Give me one. Give me a little taste.
I can't because it's so bad. It's so bad, honestly, especially given where we are in the culture today.
It was probably like destruction. We're going to destroy bad advertising or bad storytelling. The opposite.
Believe it or not, worse than that.
I don't know if I will let you guys off the hook, but this is the Courageous Podcast, and I was hoping you'd go there on it, and maybe we'll come back to that. But I'm curious, even before how long has Kin been around? How long where did you guys collide? Where did the two of you collide? Because you do have a lot in common, and I'm really curious about the nuance of how you discovered that. And like, wait a minute, I'm I lived kind of like give me the spiel on how you guys met and that those early convos of how you like light bulb moment.
Like Sophie mentioned, I was born in New York, but I grew up mostly in Africa. So my parents are from Ghana, and my dad, through his work, required the family to travel and to sort of move quite a bit. So I was fortunate to live in Cairo for a few years, lived in London for a few years, lived in Pretoria in South Africa, and then ultimately wound up in New York. Through my career in advertising and I guess in creative business, I was always really curious, and I credit by bringing a lot to that. So I bounced around many different agencies, working in New York and in LA, and I ultimately stumbled upon this amazing creative company called Sidley, based out of Montreal. So had this very interesting sort of creative sort of ethos and aesthetic, hugely design driven, hugely digital, very experiential. And I was lucky to meet the leadership team for the New York office, of which Sophie was a member. And I'll back up a little bit to just tell her story because she never talks about this, but she's super incredible. She had worked in Paris at some really incredible shops, including DDB and BTC. But then she was, again, so great at what she did that she was plucked to help start the Sidley office in Paris. Hugely successful in that role. So they said, hey, we're going to take over New York. Who can we bring along that journey? And of course, Sophie was brought over to help establish that office. So when I met Sidley in New York, it was kind of incredible, to connect with someone who is as like lovely, just a human being, but also massively talented and had passion and ambition and this entrepreneurial spirit because, she'd built Sidley in Paris. She was now in New York building Sidley. So after a few conversations, I was compelled to join. And then together we worked super closely to build that office along with a few other partners into this incredibly creative, eclectic place. We were working on Facebook and Absolute Vodka and Stella Artois and a bunch of other clients. And the output was so diverse, and I think that was one of the things that was so compelling about being a part of a company like Sidley is that there was a bravery in doing things that were first of their kind, never been done before, and taking brands really to very interesting places. So, Sophie and I were initially desk mates, and then became office mates, and honestly just got along famously, And then Sidley went on its adventure, was eventually sold to a bigger holding company, and Sophie and I shortly after moved on to different adventures, but we always stayed in touch. We shared a very common view of what the industry is and where we felt it had a lot of potential and where there was a lot of opportunity. I think because of our upbringing, we've always been very interested in the issues of our time and how that connects with the work that we do. And I don't think we'd ever found a place that appreciated that and that could bring those two worlds together. And so I'll fast forward a little bit. Sophie, after leaving Sidley, moved to LA, where she went very deep on social impact and working with brands and helping them discover their purpose and manifest that purpose in really interesting ways to advance not just their brand ambitions, but also their impact on the world that we live in. And I went to Chobani, where I had an adventure in-house that was very inspiring, honestly, because you could do creativity at a very high level, but for a company that stood for more than the product that it made. And I think that's probably a good segue into the conversation we're having here with you today.
Sophie, when you met Kwame for the first time, I mean, I know obviously we've come a long way, but Kwame group's grown up in Ghana. I think you grew up in Zaire or Congo or ish. How fast, like, did you interview him for Sidley? And like, was it over a coffee shop? Was it in the office? How fast did you guys get there? You're like, wait a minute, I grew up in Africa.
We got there pretty quickly, but we actually had to fight for a little while to get him to join us. And we courted him for a few months because he was very sought after. You hear him right now; he's very humble and all, but he's incredibly talented. And I think we fought against Wyden and Kennedy at the time, really to get him to join us. Kwame is an entrepreneur at heart, and we felt we really needed this kind of leaders as part of the team. And he's just brilliant at what he does. So, but it's true that the minute that we align on our background, our childhood, it just very quickly signaled me that he's a very, very special person. We share a lot more, and there's so much that we can do with this kind of worldview and desire to bring on an eclectic group of talent around us. And that was very immediate.
All right, so you still both go on your adventure, and Kwame, Chobani is based. So you were living where?
The factory is in upstate New York. It's in a town called Norwich, but the corporate HQ is actually in Soho. So
great.
So,
okay.
Right in the heart of downtown, I guess.
So as you guys start talking about the possibility of NewCo, we'll call it, maybe maybe destructionadvertising.com, whatever you're going to call it. How does this come about? Sophie, is Kwame are these things that you secretly talked about in your office? Like, hey, why isn't somebody doing it this way? Or you both go on your adventure. Obviously, you're in LA now. Did you guys start Kin together?
Yeah, so we started completely remotely. So Kwame was in New York leading incredible work at Chobani. He built the internal agency, built it to a 70 people team, led the whole repositioning in universal wellness, the rebranding, became internal agency of the year. Like, he did incredible. And on my end, I was, freelancing out of LA in the world of impact and really trying to understand what role I wanted to take into this world and what would be my next kind of real big adventure. And I think we would see each other probably every 3 months, whether in New York or LA, and have, reconnect and talk about the future. And, I think we grew a bit frustrated with the state of the industry. And,
what year do you think this is? What year are we talking?
We're talking end of 2018, 2019.
Okay, so before pandemic. Life
before the pandemic. Yeah.
Okay.
When you look at the wealth that is and the corporate world and what the little responsibilities that corporations were taking at the time when it comes to their action and the role and the progress that it can lead in society, we felt that we actually really wanted to be there in that place and bring on all of the creativity and the brilliance that we see in our industry to fast track that movement, to really help brands, do a lot more good than they did at the time. And we felt there was no real creative company that was sitting in that space. So it took us, I think, about a year, Kwame, right, of conversations and kind of transcontinental, calls and dinners. And ultimately, I remember it was, in the first half of 2019, maybe in the spring, we had this dinner in LA at a great Japanese restaurant. And I think a couple of sake gave us the liquid courage to say, okay, hell yes, let's go for it. And let's do this. Let's jump.
Did you wake up the next morning and go, oh shit, what did we say we were going to do last night?
No, actually, I think I was the one during that year of conversation, kind of being a lot more kind of careful and wanting to take my time for us to really fine tune our point of view. And Kwame was like, let's go, but honestly, the next day I felt the most peace I had felt in a long time, honestly. And I often say I think I really won the lottery by partnering with Kwame. And 5 years after, still very much feeling the same way, still feeling that excitement of everything we can do together.
Honestly, the feeling is 100% opposite, as in I'm the one who's lucky. I feel like it's very rare when you find someone who is, at the same time very complimentary, but also equally ambitious and hardworking. And honestly, I always tell people Sophie's the smartest person I know. And I think that's why for me,
It's
it's
too
so
kind.
amazing. But it's true, and it's so great to have her, as a partner and collaborator and someone who can kind of push and challenge, but also rally, and be supportive. Yeah, we're super fortunate, and I think that's a lot of the magic of what we're building is that there is that, inherent trust and respect and collaboration.
I think to answer to your question about the fear, when did that kick in? I think it's a few months later when, we started to pitch Kin. And so we're summer of 2019, fall 2019, and we started to pitch our vision. And at first, so Kwame is in New York, I'm in LA, and people are like, how does that work? Like, do you have offices? What's your team like? And, obviously, it took a lot of convincing, but we got our first few clients on board. We started to show work, and then 2020 happened, COVID happened, and that's where the second wave, a bit of panic happened, where we're like, oh my god, we're just 6 months in. The world is at a standstill. We had just signed Delta Airlines, as a big client, and of course, they go under a massive freeze. And that's the second moment where very early on we're like, oh wow, it's gonna take a bit of time and courage, but luckily, everything that we stood for, became so incredibly relevant in the summer of 2020, and there's been this huge kind of social conscience awakening in a way, and that really, started to quiet down all the questions around how we worked and what we were about.
This feels like a awesome love story, like in the best possible way, and I think that's like I won't shy away from that idea, right? Like great work you want to love, you want to be you know what you want to say no to, you know what you want to say yes to. And it's like I just wish more clients knew how important pouring love into the work stands for. And it's really cool to watch. This is where I'm getting better on like we're obviously doing video of this right now but a lot of this is audio. So we're just in people's ears. But like when Kwame talks about Sophie and is gushing about her skills, she's like, no. And when Sophie is talking about Kwame, he's like, no. And I think what's really happening here is I think you're both so focused on the mission and on the purpose that anything that gets in the way of it sometimes is sort of like it's not puffery, but it's just your focus seems to be very much on the right place and putting good in the right places. Where have you guys been frustrated so far? Where have you been frustrated with like, wait a minute, this should be a no-brainer. More people should know about what we're doing, or maybe they do. They, like when your company's called Courageous, I'll acknowledge that I don't get a lot of calls now from people that are not courageous. This is good, right? For me, I'm not trying to convince people. It's too hard to convince people already. It's like I might give you a piece of information and you'll come along with me. So where are you guys? Like, I don't understand why the market doesn't get this yet, or maybe they do get it. And I'd love to hear from you guys on this. Maybe Sophie, I'll start with you, and then Kwame will go to you.
So you probably heard it. I have a French accent. I'm French originally, and I've been in the States for 12 years. So peeling all of the layers of American society, American values has been quite the journey. And I went really, really deep because that's where I build my life, build my business, build my family. My kid says he's American first, not French. When we moved here, Obama was starting his second, mandate. And I came with such, staring, amazed eyes onto the country, thinking like, oh my God, this is the epitome of progress. This is incredible. I think what is so interesting is to, and at the same time frustrating, is to understand how, and that's the story of my last 12 years with America, is like understanding how change and progress is slow. And that's, I think, one of the main frustrations that I feel every day in our work, is because obviously Kwame and I were like, let's go, let's make things happen, and yeah, and we're very nimble, we go fast, we think fast, but we have to realize that change only happens when minds are deeply, deeply changed, when the psyche, when the deep layers of our society are deconstructed and rebuilt in new ways, and it takes so much time. And yeah, so I want to say that's one of the big frustration, and also seeing the country get so polarized over the last few years on topics that should not be polarized, and that's uh, things like health, reproductive health, like the rights of what freedom means in America is so polarized, and in a way that's frustrating, because you feel like, well, that's we're not acting on common sense, and that trickles down to the business, and how slow change can happen within organizations, and how much also courage it takes from brand marketers to say, no, I'm gonna move that boat towards change, I'm gonna change the internal culture, because that's also their livelihood that is on the line. And because we wrote about it recently, CMOs are now really under pressure to deliver results and fast, and they have stakeholders pressure every month, every quarter. And so when this happens, it's even harder to drive progress. So yeah, a lot of my reflection lately has been like on how do we keep change happen, but really accompany people on the long run, and it's a long game. And Kwame often tells me it's a marathon, Sophie. He inquired a bit of my Latin kind of natural instinct. That's been one of the main things for me.
Yeah, to me, and Kwame, I'm coming to you here in a minute. To me, fear is like the ultimate speed bump, right? It is the
Mm-hmm.
speed bump, and we don't think about it that way. It's like a little silent assassin that does what it does, and it slows down change, or it slows down consideration for change, or slows down curiosity. And Kwame,
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious to get your take on the topic, on overall, like where do you feel you're winning right now? Where are you frustrated? And you can flip it. You can start with like, ugh, this part drives me mad. Or, I mean, even in some ways, we're talking about perspective here, right? It's a marathon. So would love to hear it from your perspective.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I'll start with the things that I wish could be different. I feel I didn't imagine that Kin would be for everyone, but I did anticipate that we would be for more people, in the sense that more companies would see the value in making these commitments and staying the course and realizing the change, but also the business outcome. I feel we've become so transactional as a culture, and this is even outside of brand world. And yeah, I think the approach that we take is much less sort of flash in the pan, but it's almost like when you're building a fire. You have the tinder, and you have the small embers, and then it eventually grows into sort of a roaring flame. And I think that mindset, I feel, hasn't really been prioritized. And you know yes, there's a lot of pressure to deliver results today, but I don't know that that has to be at the expense of results, tomorrow and the day after, and maybe there's a bit of thinking around doing both, and growing that way. I think from an industry standpoint, I feel there's a heavy bias towards things that are proven and things that work. And I totally get it, but I think that flies a bit in the face of doing something that is original and innovative. And I wonder sometimes, as just creative people, if we are losing a bit of the creativity because there isn't as much ambition or appetite to try things that are a bit, different and haven't been done before. I think maybe the third thing is just, I feel there was a lot of talk about remaking the industry from a talent standpoint and opening more doors and getting different voices, different experience, different perspective into the business. But, given the struggles of late, I feel there's been a huge return to, again, what we know works, and a lack of desire to really push on bringing in, younger talent or bringing in talent that maybe doesn't have the exact thing in their portfolio, but has the aptitude and the attitude that might lead to great work or a great outcome. Yeah, those are probably the three things that I feel I would love to see more change on, I guess. And that honestly, I feel day to day we're working to drive some of that change in those areas. Yeah.
I feel like we're moving a little bit away from a podcast in a good way to a conversation. So if you'll forgive me for dabbling in this
No, no, no.
conversation,
Let's
Yes,
talk. Let's
please.
talk.
right? Right. To me, this is like a big rocks problem. I think there's a lot of little rocks. And, I have to be careful. You have to be careful when you're in our world, right? Because we get paid to body jump and we get paid to like step out and be unemotional about looking at emotional ideas to objectively decide, is this a yes or is this a no? I can remember sitting in my fancy office a year before I was about to leave and I hadn't told anybody. And I could see myself looking out the window and I was mad and I was sad and mad and I was frustrated because I felt like I couldn't make the change I wanted to make. And it's like I just gave a decade of my life and I don't feel like I can get where I wanted to go from the construct I was a part of creating. And part of it looked back at what I think is the biggest rock. Kwame, I couldn't agree more about like how do you like get people excited about being in this industry? Ultimately, I think it's a courageous leadership problem. Like, how do you go out and find those leaders who are not afraid? It's not different for the sake of different, right? It's different because different breaks through. It's different because we're all dying and craving for like something that actually like holds our attention and gives us something to play with. And I think there's a lot of people on the other side of the table. And it's, by the way, really easy to do this, right? They versus us. But like I felt there's people, how do I like not be a transaction to them, helping them just get a win, a small win, so they look good and maybe keep advancing in their careers. It's really hard right now to be a leader of a brand. I mean, you did it at Chobani, Kwame, right? Like, what is it like to be them right now, trying to navigate a sea of people on the other side of the brain, looking at data, looking at numbers, constantly looking for little wins, constantly looking to cover their tails. Sophie, you've come off mute here, so I'll throw it to you. Like, what are you seeing?
It makes me think of a quote around power, because what you describe is the ability to be willing to share power or to relink a piece of your power to others. And unfortunately, a lot of the industry is not ready to do that, and people who are holding the keys are not ready to do that. And it takes courage to say, you know what, I'm not relevant there. I need to share space. I need to make space, and I'm going to move aside. And that's not happening.
But that's fear too, right? That's just fear, right? Like, usually we don't understand why we're doing that. We're really, it's like, wait a minute. Like, I look at the two of you and I look at the work you guys are doing. I'm like, I would totally invest and share power. You talked about at the top of the show worldview, and it's funny. I grew up in D.C. ish, Maryland, and then from the age of 7, I went to the South in the U.S. And so I saw the South, like the deep South, and all the things that come with the deep South. It was like, oh shit, this is different. I didn't know this was. Well, oh, this is America. And then I went to school in upstate New York, and then moved to New York City. And even how, like, usually I'll describe basketball, by the way, like Baltimore basketball is a good type of basketball. The South is Tobacco Road, it's pick and rolls. New York City, it's 3-on-3, it's all butts and elbows and defense. You got to win. And you like realize like people are perspective, we're different in different places, but unless you get out of your comfort zone and see that. So how do you help a brand leader out of their comfort zone? Because for them, they just keep growing and maybe they don't have that worldview or that perspective. And giving them the courage to trust that perspective is probably part of the battle.
I think it starts with the human, like the person, and this is so big for Sophie and I. It's this, how are we relating to and connecting with and getting past the formality of being agency and client and getting to a place of real friendship and trust. I think trust is the underpinning of everything we do, and we feel our trust is built through the confidence in our knowledge and in our perspective, and also in the experience we've had working with many different brands and helping them navigate that space between innovation and culture and impact, and I think being able to speak to that, being able to share and get to a better understanding of the mechanics, I guess, of how that works, that's a huge piece of it, because again, everyone wants to de-risk in a way the choices that they're making. And the more knowledge and the more confidence you have, the easier it is for you to then speak to your colleagues and your boss and get things, moved up the ladder, if you will, especially if you're working with, I guess, a bigger brand or a bigger organization. But again, it's, companies fundamentally are people, and I think if you do the work to understand the human and what the human is after, and if there's alignment in how we orient what we are bringing to the table, there's a much greater chance for shared success. Yeah.
I mean, it's very true what Kwame mentioned. It goes through people, and not everybody is also ready and convinced that this is the right thing to do. That bringing purpose at the core business is the right thing to do. We're lucky though, because now we have receipts. There is a lot of research that has been done on the topic. We show that company that put purpose at the core, perform better, that their valuation increase, that the consumer trust increase, that people are more likely to remember you and defend you even in times of backlash. So there's a lot out there that we can start to use to quiet down these fears, because today there's almost like an epidermic reaction, allergic reaction to anything purpose oriented or woke, or because of the fear of being canceled, the potential backlash online and all this. But when you look at it objectively and you look at the business case and how that is actually driving not only good, but also very much growth for companies, I think we can kind of take a bit of that layer of emotional reaction and look at it objectively and say, no, this is actually good, for the business, the way we should go about it. And it is the right thing to do.
I feel like purpose is getting a little canceled right now in the marketplace. I don't know if you're feeling that yourselves, but like right or wrong, like you said, there's a business case to be made for it. Are people sharing that with you guys? Like, do you hear that from them? Are they asking, or is it sort of like in the subtext of the way they're asking questions back?
I think we have all sorts of conversations. We get in rooms where the topic is diversity, equity, and inclusion, and you have a raised hand and somebody who genuinely asked, like, okay, well, is it still something that is worth investing in when we see Elon Musk say D&I must die, and we're not sure it's going to stick around? And so all the way to, having clients who are really deep, champion of purpose in business. So we kind of have all the conversations, and we try to create a safe space to have these conversations, because if people come at it with fear and are not able to ask, the uncomfortable, questions, then we're not progressing. So we really welcome being challenged, being asked tough questions on purpose, and Yes, I think purpose has become the latest word, like, digital or buzz, or we want to go viral, or like, any of these kind of marketing trends. But behind that, there's a real movement towards, brands and corporations that take more of their responsibilities. And that's what, their audiences, their customers are waiting for them to do.
You talked about being courageous earlier, and that being the name of, your company, and people immediately switching up. Oh, I'm not courageous. That's not for me. But I do think there's a conversation we're often having, which is there are degrees to this work. You know, you can't yes, you can be a Patagonia or Ben and Jerry's, but you can also be so many other phases in between, and all of that is moving your business and is moving society and communities forward. But it's not a one size fits all, and I think that's a bit of the important thing to maybe make clear at this moment in time, where there's so much fear, because I think it's not avoiding the conversation altogether. It's just figuring out what your role and where you are in your journey, and how to continue to move forward or make progress in that journey. And that's what we enjoy doing. Because I think, Sophie and I always talk about, of course, we work with Ben and Jerry's and they're amazing, right? But and it's great to work with like the good students, quote unquote. But I feel in a way there's more to be done and there's more impact to create working with so many other companies who maybe aren't as far in this journey as a Patagonia or a Ben and Jerry's, because the reality is they touch so many people, and one small thing with a big global brand can change so many lives versus, doubling down with brands that are already, in a way, have their audience and are very focused in the space.
But it does help. Like as an outsider looking at your brand, it's like it's good to have the Ben and Jerry's and the Deltas. Like obviously you're playing with like you said, like the ones that are 2 feet in. And I hear you. Like I don't want to go political at all here, but like going across the aisle to a brand that there's a lot of the ceiling is there for what they can do in the do good space. Totally get it. You mentioned my company's called Courageous. You guys are kin. I wrote this thing a few weeks ago called The Cheetah and the Dog. And I do these weekly doses of courage. And the idea was, this is a while back, but in San Diego there's a wild animal park. And I got a chance to go watch this pioneer cheetah. There was like no glass between me, by the way. Run. It was like twine. Run by me at 70 miles an hour to grab its toy. And like as it's doing this, I'm learning it's the pioneer cheetah. And I'm like, I don't think I want the pioneer cheetah pioneering other ideas with no glass between me and the twine. But it goes and does this thing, and they're like, do you want to take a picture with the cheetah? You can do that. And you're like, how? How did this happen? And we learned that when the cheetah was born, the first thing it sees is the dog. And they think the dog is kin. They think the dog is their like paternal creature. And so anytime the cheetah wants to think cheetah and is like, what's this human all about? The dog's like, nah, they're cool. I'm like, wow, this is client service 101. Like, this is what it means, right? Like, the client sometimes is they will go cheetah. And we understand why. Like, they got to report to a boss, the king of their culture or whoever that is, and they're afraid. And our job is to be an ally and a friend. And yet somewhere along the way, I think the idea of being someone's friend in business, being kin in business, became like a different 4-letter F word. I'm assuming, like, what is your take on, do you find yourself friends with your clients? Like, how fast do you get to friendship with your clients?
So I do think this is baked a little bit into how we launched the company. We took a very hands-on approach, and we worked mostly within our network and extended network to meet like-minded people. Because again, we're already selling an idea and a mode of thinking that I think wasn't super commonplace when we started 5 years ago. Not as many brands were excited about leaning into their purpose and manifesting that purpose in the world in a way that improves, of course, their business and their brand, but also community. So already we needed to find people who were excited about that approach and excited about trying that approach. So we ended up connecting with, and Sophie and I are fortunate. We've been almost 2 decades in the business. We've met some really brilliant people who are now at the helm of some incredibly powerful brands. So we were fortunate to connect with them, and those were sort of our early clients. And then through the work that we've done and through having some success, we've been able to grow that sort of community and bring on board a few more brands and a few more clients who are excited to collaborate and try the approach that we're advocating for. So I think to us, it's so important, that sense of chemistry and that values alignment and you know, getting past, again, like I said before, the formality of the agency client dynamic and becoming, understanding the people that we're dealing with.
And I would say also, selfishly, we started our own company so we could have that freedom of choice on who we want to partner with. After 15 plus years in advertising and having been in all types of relationships, some great, some more abusive, in the space, we were like, no, Kin is about, fostering this amazing collective of human beings, people we admire, people we want to see every day, and on both sides, right? Within the company, outside the company. And let's just be selfish and do great work with people we love. So yeah, we've been very lucky to meet a lot of them and make new friends along the way. And I think it's also your company is called Courageous, and people come to you because that's what they're looking for. And I think we also try to lay it down very early on as well. Like, we're not interested to be vendors. We come into the relationship because we have a point of view and we want to partner and be together in this and make friends along the way.
I think it's easy to say, but hard sometimes to not believe, right? But have you guys gone in a scenario yet over the 5 where you're like, we're not friends? Let's just not lie to ourselves. It moved into transactional mode, or are you able to go no, friends, this is what it's all about. It's like, we want to be, like you said, there's energy, there's flow. The work is usually better. How?
We have no idea what you're talking about, by the way. It's been super perfect the whole time. No issues, no problems. Absolutely. And guess what? I think when that happens, it's not great for you. It's not great for them, honestly. And it's just not sustainable because you're not able to realize the creative ambition. You're not able to realize the impact that you want. And then I think perhaps the gift and the curse of being a 100% project-based company is that when it's working, it's great, and you get another project. And when it's not working, you don't. And whether that's a choice that we make or a choice that they make, it's very clear. So in a way, there's no pressure. It's if you buy into this and if you think this is working and if you're excited to continue, then of course, and there are many clients that we are 3-4 years in with, working on many different types of creative challenges that we're helping them solve. And there are a few clients that maybe we worked once or twice with, and then we felt that it wasn't necessarily the best setup. But I think the one thing we will say is we're always excited to try. If there's a clear project, if there's a clear way that we feel we can add value, and if the human on the other end feels like we have, like I said before, the chemistry and the opportunity to truly partner and make something happen, then yeah, we're all for it.
You guys, this is our second time jamming together, right? First on the record. It's just super easy, and you're easy. I find myself wanting just to talk to you guys for hours. It's very easy and clearly like-minded. For the audience, they should know I don't have any interest in Kin, but you can find their work at workwithkin.com. You guys are doing some cool stuff. I wish you how do I help you guys get there faster? I think that's part of the platform, right? Is when you find friends, you want more people to know about the work you're doing, and maybe that's a good way to end. I'll ask both of you. And here's the other thing: I'd love for you guys to also ask a question that my audience considers. So I'll give you a cue, and then be thinking about the question you want to ask the audience for them to ponder, and then you can give me one if you want to. But first, for you, Sophie, I'm starting with you, and then Kwame, you get to bring us home. What do you wish everyone knew about you guys that they don't? And it might be something that you're like, ugh, why hasn't this like why don't more people know this? Or it might be, as you evolve and you stay curious and you learn, you now know X, Y, or Z. So Sophie, you get to start.
I think something that I wish people knew is that we can help them with, bigger business and brand, topic. It, in a few instances, people tend to pigeonhole us or in this kind of cause marketing, CSR, working with the head of impact. But let's talk about what's really the business, the brand challenge, because that's where our expertise lie. And it's not a separate thing from your business and everyday, considerations. And we do have, the case studies and the receipts to show that it really drives growth and brand love and brand preference. So sorry, it's very very transactional where I'm landing it, but I feel I feel that's something that sometimes is misconstrued or we're not necessarily considered in that way enough, I would say.
I don't find that transactional at all. I feel like it's more like reality, right? Like you get 12% of someone's brain and they're doing 19 things and reading email and they hear about you and yeah, open up the aperture and go a little bit wider. I could see why that would be a little bit of a pain point. Kwame?
I think people kind of know this, but I'll say it anyway. I feel what Sophie and I are most excited about is what this platform that we've built can do to accelerate the ambitions of others. Like we had a lot of conversation. Is it the Kwame and Sophie agency? It's not, but it's not. Like what we're excited about is that we're creating this very incredible space, and in the space, we're glad that creative people can come and feel seen and enabled and appreciated. And we're also excited that brands can come and feel like we totally get them and their business and what they do, and that we are unlocking new avenues and new opportunities together, with them. I think I think that's a big North Star for us, like what we're doing here, in our view, is so much bigger than the two people that you see on this call, and everyone that we've been lucky to partner and collaborate with, we hope feels that, and not just in terms of the emotion of knowing that they're working with great people and that they're getting creative work, but also the material, tangible like results of the collaboration that we make together. I think that's probably it.
All right, Sophie, you got a question for the gallery that's stayed with us for 55 minutes and has listened to our convo?
Well, I want to ask, how can we help? What's on their mind? What's keeping them awake at night? Because then, if we understand each other more from that perspective, then we know how we can maybe move forward together.
I think Sophie stole my question. I'm kidding. You know, I would love to know what they're excited to build, and I think it goes back to a question you asked earlier. It's there's often like a bit of fear and a lot of inertia that comes with that fear around what you want to create in the world or what you want to change in the world. Let's put it that way, I guess. But, you know, get past the fear and you start to get into action, and I think maybe this is a bit self-critical of me, but I'm often a shoot first, ask questions sort of later approach. But it's all from the perspective of you got to just get on the road. You got to just get on the road and start doing the things. And then what is it? When you get on the road, the path will reveal itself. I think we're big believers in that. It's you have to get on with it, and through that, things will be revealed. So I think, yeah, like, what do you want to build? What do you want to change? And let's get on with it.
A great place to end. I would say, for those of you who are in positions of, I'm air quoting, power, as Sophie we talked about earlier, you have more freedom than you even know. Like, you have more freedom to. I know when fear wins, we feel more constrained, and we don't say what if as much as we should or could. And I think, yeah, like, who says your marketing plan has to look the way it does? Why not carve out a little bit in your experimental budget if you believe that you can move the needle and make more friends? So appreciate Sophie and Kwame. Easy to root for, guys. Like, at a fresh note on, it's cool to see where you came from, like the anomalies and the Sidleys and the just obviously brand side too, but your mosaics of all those places. And let's stay in touch. I got to send you back on the road now. Okay.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Cool. Thanks so much.
Take care, guys. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Courageous Podcast. If you enjoy the show, don't forget to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts so more people can find us. See you again next week.